Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. As you might be able to tell, we are not in London at the moment and we are actually in Tuscany.
Yeah, more specifically we're just in a place called Cortona, which is on the mountains and borders Umbria, so a really beautiful hilly part of Tuscany, and we're in a remote farmhouse in the mountain with no neighbours, just hundreds of lizards, and it's just been absolute peace.
Yeah, we've been here for, I think this is our fourth day today. We're here for 2 weeks. We're actually here on a dual purpose. We're here for sort of holiday relaxation time.
Yeah.
And if you've watched the channel before and if you've watched us before, you will know that we're actually looking to buy in Italy in the near future.
Yeah, we're looking for a place sort of now, really.
Yeah.
And the place we're going to show you is kind of similar to what we're hoping to get.
Yeah.
Maybe something with a bit more land. I think we all want to make wine and oil, we've decided. But
and a bit of a better track to get here, because this...
Oh my God.
We'll show you guys, but the road to get here is insane.
Yeah, it's like something that, if you could think of like a road that's been like heavily bombed and it's just full of like potholes and broken walls, and we're in an automatic, so it took a bit of effort to get up here, but it's worth it because we have panoramic views of Cortona. We have complete peace. There's no one around us, no one can see us. I think we're the highest house in the area, but I think as kind of Ash touched on, this is almost identical to kind of what we want to buy out here.
Yeah.
So,
and hopefully, I'm not sure if in this video we'll do it, but we're trying to do some house viewings, and I think maybe the next video will probably be house viewings. I think this is just going to be the tour of the house, so we'll take you around now and show you. This place is 3 bedrooms. It has a pool. You can't buy it. It's a rental, holiday rental. But we thought we'd take you around and show you what we're staying in. So yeah, anything else you want to add?
yeah, let's do it.
Let's get started. So Chad's taking over camera duties and I'm going to take you around. Apologies for the darkness, but as you come inside, it will lighten up a little bit.
Yeah, it's important to remember that the reason these houses are dark is because they have small windows to keep the heat out.
Yeah.
So they're very dark inside, but it kind of multi-purpose keeps them very cool in the summer months.
Yeah, and it's a really beautiful property. So as you come in, this is what I would sort of class as the entranceway. You have a really beautiful old traditional beams running across with the terracotta tiling on the roof. They have really beautiful furniture in here, lots of woods, lots of antique mahoganies, chestnuts, really beautiful terracotta floor, tiles, lots of books. I think this, you're getting my shoes in this. I think this, from what it looks like, used to be like a family home and they've sort of turned it into a holiday rental because there's little bits of memorabilia everywhere for the family that own this property, I would assume. But as you come into this way, this is the lounge. I would say Italian properties aren't the most cosy places, considering that we're British and we like...
Everything's like hard floor, wooden furniture.
Yeah, with not really lots of soft furnishings, but as you can see, really beautiful traditional style fireplace, lots of antique art adorning the walls. I think if we had a property, it wouldn't look too dissimilar to this on the inside. I think furniture would be a bit different. I think
furniture, but in terms of the white on the inside, I think not only does it brighten the place up because it's dark, you kind of have to stick to that colour scheme.
Yeah.
But I think it keeps it more cool as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. I will say all of the windows in this property are positioned in the most beautiful way. So the view out of here is the garden to the swimming pool, which we'll take you out to in a second. But then if you spin around to this way, I'll show you the view out Are we doing the view yet, or should we keep that?
Gardens last.
Gardens last.
House
okay.
first.
So I'll pop in the view of this later. But as you can see, hopefully the camera will pick it up.
No, it's too bright.
Too bright. So making our way back into the entranceway, you pass on through here. This is 2 stories. So down here there is 1 bedroom with 2 single beds. I feel like we're doing a property tour for the actual company.
I know.
So here is the dining room. Again, a really beautiful room, lots of wall plates on the walls. I think I would style this place very much like this, just with a bit of different furniture. Kitchen is through here, but before we go into the kitchen, let's quickly show the downstairs bedroom. We are not staying in this room down here, we're staying upstairs, and quite a nicely sized room. Everywhere has aircon in here. These doors go out onto the driveway, where we parked our car, and it's a very steep decline to get down, so hopefully our car doesn't roll away. But again, this room is really lovely. We haven't used this room because it's just the 2 of us here.
I must admit, these beds will break your back.
Yeah.
These are the most uncomfortable things, and the whole house, the beds are very old.
Yeah.
So it's got air conditioning, which was a nice surprise.
Come on through here. This room's quite dark, but this is the bathroom. And I will say, again, in Italian properties, bathrooms usually aren't very nice, and this one is quite lovely. The tile on the shower and the bath are really beautiful. Like a nice reclaimed tile. And then coming back out of the bathroom and out of the bedroom, again you have the view out onto the whole of Cortona, which we'll show you in a second because that is the money shot in my opinion. But we'll take you out to here, which is the kitchen.
Now, Italian kitchens for me are always tiny, and I don't get it for 2 reasons. One is food is a big thing and family is a big thing, and I don't understand why the kitchens are always so small. But also they get really hot and steamy, and if they're in a bigger space it's a bit more cool, whereas in a tiny little space it'll be really hot. So if there's any Italians can answer why Italian kitchens are always a tiny little box, I'd love to know.
It's a really beautiful kitchen though. If you come on through, the traditional, I don't know what it would have been, whether it would have been like a traditional fireplace that you'd cook on, I think was in this corner because there's an old chimney sort of stack above there with a really beautiful mantelpiece. Lots of nice little blue tiles, a window out onto the driveway, really beautiful terracotta tiles on the countertops. Again, I don't think I'd have that. That's a really beautiful way of finishing off the kitchen. Same terracotta tiles on the floor. I don't know if the light's going to pick this up, but view out onto the Cortona countryside, the Tuscan countryside. Straight across you have a view of Montepulciano and Siena, but we'll show you that in a second. You do, I googled it yesterday.
Not Siena.
It is.
Siena's an hour away.
That's the onwards onto Montepulciano.
Okay.
I'm going to leave this in because you're incorrect.
It's not Siena.
And then upstairs, we'll take you upstairs now, but there is no handrail here, so...
If you were drunk and you were coming down here at night...
No boozy nights for anyone.
This is dangerous.
But again, the stairs are terracotta tiled, really beautiful. Up here, you come on to...
It's just a lovely little lounge area.
Yeah, it's a really lovely little sort of waiting, sitting area. Desk here, again with some lots of really beautiful antiques on it. We have a sort of balcony with steps leading down to the front of the property here, again with a beautiful view outside, but Chad's not going to show you that because that's the top secret. Pop on up to the ceilings, really beautiful vaulted ceilings, again with the beams, terracotta tiles, really traditional, really beautiful, and I think this is one of my favourite things about Italian properties, the terracotta tile mixed with the woods. I think it's a really stunning combination. Here you have, I'd say like a kid's room or a guest bedroom.
Yeah, it's a kid's room, 2 single beds.
Single beds. It's very dark on camera. With some really beautiful tiny little windows with a nice little wooden shutters on them, which is really fun, opening them up every day and sort of opening and closing the house. And then the final room of this house, it's not the biggest house, but it's a good size.
That's a good size house,
Really
especially
good
for a
size.
holiday home.
Yeah. The last bedroom is the main bedroom where we are staying at the moment.
really
Again, a
nice.
really beautiful size. This is the whole width of the house, so the whole room is just one big room for us. Opening these shutters and these windows in the morning is absolutely incredible because this view is breathtaking.
Yeah, in case you're wondering why every window has shutters, logically it's just to keep the heat out. If we close these shutters, the room's completely black and dark, whereas when you leave them open, the heat and the sun pours in. So
Yeah.
every window is basically boarded up
Yeah.
during the day.
But what we'll do now is we'll take you back downstairs and I think outside and show you the swimming pool and then the view for the property, because I think it's the best part. Okay, so we're back outside. We've just come through the kitchen and this is the first site of the property that you'll see. Really beautiful. I think it's our favourite type of house in Italy. It's the traditional sort of Italian stone exterior. There's not much render, which isn't my favourite in a house, but again, this view is absolutely stunning. I think it's a Virginia creeper that's climbing up around everything. So in the wintertime, it'll be red, but in the spring and summer, it's a really lovely green vine that covers the whole house. But yeah, let's take you through to the front of the house. The most incredible view of Tuscany. So once you've taken in the view, you then make your way through to the garden. Usually it's quite hard to find a really beautiful property with a pool as well. This is the pool. There is a little seating area and an outdoor shower at the back. The one thing that we both love about this pool is that it's really private. There's sort of bay hedging, trees, there's everything covering you. And then the view that you have out of here is absolutely stunning between the olive trees and the rosemary hedging. You get the same view that you get from the first patio or the terrace. And it's just a really, really wonderful place to take in the sun and enjoy the water in the Tuscan heat. And that brings us to the end of our little house tour in the Cortona Hills.
Yeah, so I hope it's given you a little bit of a taste as to what sort of remote farmhouses look like in Tuscany specifically. Again, this is the kind of house that we are looking to buy, so for us it's really good to kind of come here and experience this and understand what we like and what we don't like. There's things we love about this property, there's things that are like non-negotiables for us that we wouldn't do. But I think in terms of its size and its sort of maintenance, it's kind of what we would want. We want something maybe a little bigger.
I'd say a tiny little bit bigger. We're not looking for a palace or a mansion of any sort.
No, but slightly bigger farmhouse with more rooms, and I think more land as well. I think we haven't hidden the fact that, you know, retirement for me is making olive oil and red wine. So we'd want sort of room for an olive grove and also for a vineyard as well. But for something that's a bit more petite and small, this place would be absolutely perfect. So that's basically all we can kind of show you for the house. However, what we're going to do is later on in the video, we're going to do a little, not a Q&A, but a little talking session where we'll explain kind of what we've learned about the house buying process in Italy as foreigners. I say as foreigners, you're not a foreigner.
I have it very easy, yeah.
We might actually be able to save quite a bit of money because Ash has an Italian passport, so the taxes are a bit more favourable. But yeah, I think it might, for anyone who's sort of anticipating buying a place, Italy is famously bureaucratic and there's so many things you can do in terms of buying based on what your preferences are. So we'll kind of open the book a little bit there and give you a flavour as to what that very stressful process looks like.
That should be enough of the house tour for now. What we're actually going to do today is head on over to Siena, and I think we're going to try and do San Gimignano as well.
Yeah.
Two really beautiful places in Tuscany. But for the next few videos, I think we're going to do quite a lot of visiting around Tuscany. Hopefully, as I mentioned, some house viewings, but I think today in this video, it's probably just going to be Siena, San Gimignano and Cortona. I think we're going to try and scratch off as well.
Yes, and then we have Montepulciano and Arezzo. We're going to visit them too, and we have some vineyards in stock as well. So that'll probably be next week's video, not this week's.
Got to spread it across, you know, make the most of it. But yeah, let's stop talking and head on out. Okay, so we're currently climbing the bell tower in Siena. I think it's 400 steps and they look like this. So I will check in when we get to the top. Is this how small people used to be?
De fuera sí, pero...
Right, so as promised, we thought we'd do a little sit down. I think first we'll do a little review of what we think of this part of Tuscany so far. We've never been to the places we've been to this time. We've been to sort of more northern Tuscany this time, and I say this time we're positioned more southern. So we've done Florence, we've done Lucca, we've done all the areas around there, but this time we wanted to focus our efforts on Siena, Montepulciano.
Sort of central and southern Tuscany, yeah.
Yeah, so we started off by visiting Siena and San Gimignano.
Yeah. Siena, you might know, is famous for the horse race. So you've probably seen images where they turn the town square into basically a sort of horse racing show. It's called the Palio, and it's only on twice a year. I think it's once in July and once in August. So sadly, we missed it this time round. But I think it's also quite famous for the flag waving competitions as well. One thing you'll know about Tuscany is they're very proud of their towns. Yeah, they're sort of medieval towns, and each of them have their own colours and flags, and I believe there's some kind of annual flag waving competition. But yeah, long story short, Siena was nice. What did you like about it?
I like Siena. I don't know whether it was as big as I thought it was. There wasn't that many I thought it'd be like a mini Florence. I'd say it's definitely more rustic than Florence. Florence to me was very touristy. Very American, very, very busy. Whereas Siena was more laid back. I don't think it was, we're going to sound negative, but I don't think it was as impressive as I thought it would be.
I didn't think so either.
No.
I was a bit disappointed. I think maybe if you go for the horses and stuff, that's when it
Yeah.
is maybe most impressive. But I think the thing with Tuscany is, once you've seen a bit of it, you've kind of seen a lot of it. And what I mean is a lot of the towns are very similar. Similar architecture, similar size, little walled towns and touristy shops. So I think it's hard to be sort of continually impressed. But yeah, Siena definitely wasn't quite what I thought it would be. And I don't know what I thought it would be. It's hard to say.
Yeah, it was still a beautiful, beautiful part
Stunning,
of
yeah.
Italy, Tuscany. And then after we went to Siena, we just decided to go to San Gimignano, which isn't the closest to where we are. It was an extra, I think, 30 minutes on from Siena.
Yeah, basically it's a bit more northern towards Florence.
Yeah.
You go north of Siena, I think northwest slightly, and it's there. But it didn't make sense. It made sense just to get it out the way, then come back and do another 2-hour road trip up there. So San Gimignano is basically a little walled medieval town, much smaller than Siena.
Yeah.
It's basically one main strip that goes through it, and then there's some back streets on either side. But it was quaint, right? It was
really quaint. Again, they do all sort of blend together.
Yeah.
And this is the issue. We love that about Tuscany, because I think that's why we want to live here, because you know what you're going to get before you go.
Yeah.
It's all very similar. The people are all very similar. The towns are very similar. It's just the architecture and I say the geography of the land is a bit different. So some are more hilly, some are more flat.
Yeah. I just think these towns are very similar. So once you've seen a few, you might get a little bored of it potentially, and maybe the main reasons to go are you found a great restaurant for lunch or for dinner, but it is pretty much just sort of touristy ceramic shops.
To touch on the restaurants as well, we always used to say, oh, we can never find good restaurants, and this isn't a tried and tested thing, but we're testing it at the moment. The Michelin Guide, we always get told about it, but we've never tried it.
So I was in Thailand a few months ago, and a lot of the guys I was there with are kind of avid business travelers, and they swear by it. And we ate at the most amazing places in Bangkok that we could really mark by like hygiene and you know, sort of real critics. As opposed, we know a lot of these restaurants just get 5-star reviews from tourists, and they end up having 5,000 5-star on TripAdvisor and things, and it's just because they're tourist traps and people are okay with it.
Yeah.
But if you really want the kind of hidden gems, the places that are, you know, really put a lot of effort into their food, and it's not just pizza and pasta.
Yeah, but also it's not Michelin star, it's like a Michelin Guide, so it's good produce, it's high quality, like...
Totally
restaurant.
affordable. We ate at Osteria, is that how you say it? Osteria?
I don't think it was in Osteria.
Oh, maybe it wasn't. But we ate at a restaurant in Siena that was lovely and came from there. So yeah, download the Michelin Guide. It's just an app on your phone.
Yeah.
It will give you all the sort of places around you and the towns you're going, and try and narrow your food search down.
Yeah. The reason I'd say that as well, just to add in finally, is because when you're in Italy, a lot of the restaurants around the places you'll visit are all tourist traps. They'll sort of invite you in with their menus and say, eat here. And you think that because they're busy, they'd be good, authentic food, but they're really not. So if you're getting called into a restaurant, my top tip is highly avoid.
Yeah, my other advice is if ever you're in like a piazza or a town square, never eat there. Yeah. Those restaurants that you see that are full to the brim of people, they're the worst.
Yeah.
They're often just really generic food, quite bland, high prices. Make sure you go off the beaten track a little bit, go down the side streets, the alleys. Listen, if you hear a bunch of English accents talking and American accents talking, don't go to those restaurants. But if you hear a lot of Italian people talking, it's probably pretty good. But yeah, San Gimignano was nice, definitely worth a visit. But you know, we probably only stayed there about an hour.
Yeah.
And then we went to Cortona.
Yesterday we went to Cortona. Yes.
Yeah.
Again,
Which is just 10 minutes around the corner.
It takes 5 minutes to get there from this area, but because we have to go down a beaten track, it takes us, I think, 10 minutes to get down the road that we live on.
Yeah.
But it's literally, if you can see the hills behind us, it's on the other side of this hill, so we're literally 5 minutes away. And again, a really beautiful town. I'd say it's probably one of the quietest towns I've been to in Tuscany. I don't know if it's because we're not in tourist season. It just felt a bit slower. The pace was a bit slower.
Yeah, definitely.
But again, really beautiful.
Yeah, it's very hilly. So it's basically on top of a massive hill, and every street is basically hilly. In fact, the local government have done a good job of putting escalators there, because it's just so many steps to get from the car parks up to the town that I think it was just a bit difficult for people. But yeah, there was a lovely cathedral we went into. You get some really nice panoramic views from the main town. There's some nice little shops and restaurants.
I'd say different shops as well, more authentic, not tourist-heavy shops.
Yeah.
There are the few that are obviously catering to tourists, but I'd say there were a few antique shops. There
Quite
were
independent shops.
Yeah,
as
mostly
well.
independent. Yeah. So yeah, really enjoyed Cortona. We did that yesterday, and then for the next few days, I think we're just going to relax at home. It's going to be, I think, around 31 degrees for the next week and a half. So
Yeah, so from now for the next like 8 days, it's
Yeah.
31 degrees and sunny, no cloud. So I think
as you
we're
can tell,
just going to chill. We're gonna have a couple of days just doing nothing here, working on our suntans, and then we still need to do a number of places. We're going to do a couple of vineyards and eat at the restaurants there, which will be nice. We are still to do places like Arezzo, Montepulciano, and the hilly part with the gladiator. It was filmed.
Valdorcia.
So yeah, still a few more trips, but I think we need a few days of just doing
Yeah,
nothing.
relaxing. I will just say, the reason we're going through these areas quite critical, I think, is because we are trying to narrow down the areas on which we potentially want to live. We're doing this thing now where obviously we look online for houses, so there are websites like Rightmove, Idealista, lots of online places where you can find houses for sale. But what we're trying to do is go to these little towns and see if the real estate agents and the estate agents there offer sort of houses that aren't on the internet. So I think
Which they do.
Yeah, they do. So what we're doing now is we're taking like photos, we're writing down all these websites of these housing places in hopes that we can sort of contact them and see if there's anything that isn't really on the market.
Yeah. I think another thing that's very important is if you are going to be buying a place in the country in Italy, you really want to make sure that the town or surrounding towns are good, because they're going to be your local towns. So you want to make sure the restaurants are good, the cafes, it's got the things that you need, whether it's, you know, pharmacies and all the rest of it. You don't want to be anywhere too remote where there's nothing around you. And you also want to know that when you do want to go into town or you have guests visiting, that there's an abundance of things around you that you can entertain people. So we do want to kind of be within 20 to 30 minutes of a pretty good town to have that. Truth be told, having done quite a lot of Tuscany now, my favourite town / city has been Lucca. Now Lucca is west of Florence, so it's on the more northern side of Tuscany, not where we are here. There's up and down sides. Kind of central to southern Tuscany, it's more rolling hills, it's more wine country. It's a bit more sort of rustic, whereas northern Tuscany maybe slightly less so. But Lucca was just the most stunning walled city with amazing food scene, great wine bars. You're 30-40 minutes from Florence if you want to be, so we're really torn between, do we find a place in between Florence and Lucca, or do we want to be more southern around sort of Siena, Montepulciano area? So,
And just to give you a bit of background, the reason we're taking this quite seriously is because we see this Italian property as being, I'd say, kind of a forever home. We're not really looking to buy and sell in Italy.
No.
We sort of want to find the perfect place that we can make our mark on, renovate it to a certain degree. We don't want to find a ruin.
no.
Or you might be changing your mind about that.
We're kind of
It
open.
depends. It really does depend.
We're open-minded, but I think the reality is we don't want to do this again. We want to find what we consider to be the perfect place in Italy. We want to, pass it down to children and keep it as a sort of family heirloom for a long time. So it's quite a big deal for us. It's not just a case of buying something and doing it up. It really has to tick a lot of boxes, and that means you really have to spend time in the places where you're considering, so you can really get a feel for, do you like it? It's why we're here for 2 weeks, which is a long time to be stuck in a remote farmhouse, but it gives us sort of ample time to get a sort of an adjustment to what life could be like here.
Yeah. We'll probably touch on, because I'm sure a lot of you, I don't know if a lot of people want to know how to move to Italy and the ins and the outs of it, but I'm very interested. We watch videos all the time on the cost of it, the taxing situation.
Yeah.
This is Chad's strong point.
Yeah, it's just, it was important to me. I found it quite difficult. One of the reasons we're very open and transparent on here is because I know how hard it is to find people on YouTube who are honest about the cost of things or doing things. It's frustrating. You'll spend hours of your time watching videos and getting no answers. And That's why we're a little bit more transparent than most when we've done our Q&As about buying in London and renovating. And the same thing's quite important here. You know, Italy is famously bureaucratic. There's lots of different paths you can go down towards buying here. And I think it's good just to have sort of blunt, plain English. This is kind of the main high-level information you need to know when buying here. I think one thing it's important to point out first when buying a house in Italy is what kind of buyer are you? Are you buying as a holiday home or are you buying it as a permanent residence? Now, hear me out on the permanent residence because there's some tricks there. You may think, oh, that means I have to be in Italy all year, every year. It's not the case. What would qualify you as buying it as a primary residence is that you spend at least 6 months of the year here. Now, that might still be a big commitment for a lot of people, but if you're pretty set that you will spend 6 months of the year in Italy, then you would be in a position, assuming you have the legal right to sort of be in Italy, live and work, you'd qualify. Whereas if you are just planning to come maybe a couple of months a year, weeks here and there, it is a holiday home and it would be treated as such. And then there's something called a registration tax, which is basically a property tax, or stamp duty we call it in the UK. And there's a big difference between what you pay on either way. So if you're buying it as a holiday home, you will pay 9%. Whereas if you're buying it as a primary residence, I believe it's 2%. So quite a big chunk there. And on top of that, I think you also pay VAT of 22% on top. So it's not the cheapest, but as you can imagine, it makes a big difference. So with Ash having an Italian passport, you know, that means that with the house also being in his name, that, you know, maybe we could avoid that as Ash is an Italian citizen and could argue that it's a primary residence. Whereas if I was buying on my own, I wouldn't have that. It would clearly be a holiday home. So 2 options we can go down there and 2 very different tax brackets.
So that covers, I guess, the property tax, but
Yeah.
there are other things that come into play, like the notary and the fee you pay to the notary.
Yeah.
Again, Chad will take this part over.
So a notary is basically like a specialised legal fee that you pay in Italy, and there's no way around it. You pay a notary fee once you've purchased the property. It covers all the legality of it, and it basically ranges between sort of 1 and 2.5%, I think. It may differ in certain places, but I think it is a sort of federal, nationwide fee. But the trick is you also pay 22% VAT on top of the notary fee. So you might be sat there thinking, okay, it's just a small little fee, but there's always the VAT that creeps in as well. But yeah, typically a notary fee is between sort of 1 and 2.5%. And what's important though is it is 1 and 2.5% of the property's value. But here's where there's an interesting point. It's what's known as the cadastral value, and what that is what the government deems the property is worth. And this is quite interesting because Italy, particularly Tuscany, a lot of the house prices are hyperinflated. So because there's a lot of Americans and Brits buying here, there's a huge amount of demand, not enough supply. So a lot of these properties sell for double, sometimes triple what they're actually worth. So let's say you're buying a property for €1,000,000. If the government deems, well, we only think it's worth 500,000, that's what you'll pay the notary on, the 500,000 value, not the hyperinflated private value. So that's a good thing when you are buying, is to avoid being sort of heavily ripped off on that sense.
Yeah. Also, if you're looking at the sort of market of real estate, a lot of the houses don't sell, and I believe it's to do with the prices. We've been looking for years. I think this is what, 3rd year we've been looking at houses in Italy, and some of the houses that we saw 3 years ago are still on the market because they're valued incredibly stupidly high.
They are. There is that, but you can't blame them, right? The Italians are sat there thinking, okay, all these rich Americans and Brits are coming in, I'm going to push my luck and try and get more than the house is worth. The one thing I would say is Italy is a country that is very open to negotiation. So just because you see a property and you think, God, that's 200-300k out of budget, it's put in an offer, because you will be very surprised. You don't know how long it's been on the market, you don't know what pressure there is to sell it. They've probably been, you know, sort of dreaming to just get it off their hands and remove the stress because the maintenance of the property is too expensive. So yeah, don't be afraid to go in quite cheeky and put in what you think it's worth. You'll be amazed how much you may get off a property here.
Yeah, definitely. So another fee that comes into play is the estate agent fee. It's a bit different from the UK because in the UK the seller typically pays the fee, whereas it's a bit different in Italy.
Yeah, so in the UK, if you buy a property, you don't pay any estate agent fees because it's all on the seller. In Italy, it's typically split 50-50 between the buyer and the seller, or sometimes, cheekily, the seller will try and push it all on the buyer. Or the buyer could push back and try and push it on the seller. Again, these things are open to negotiation, but usually it's split down the middle. So that's another fee you have to take into account. And it's usually 3%. But here's the thing, it's of the purchase price, not the cadastral price that I was talking about. So this time it's you pay 3% on what you are purchasing the property for. So it could be considerably higher. So it's important that you either find a way to negotiate that the seller takes on that fee, or at least there's a 50-50 split where you're both taking on that responsibility. Because, you know, 3% of, say, €1,000,000 is not pocket change, right? It's
a lot of money.
It's a fair amount. One way you can potentially avoid this is if you buy privately. So it may be that you just put letters and doors of properties you want to buy, and you know someone who knows someone, and you're able to buy the property just using your lawyer and their lawyer, and you can avoid estate agents, and then you can avoid that fee. So never be afraid. If you see a property that's a dream, you know, put letters through the door saying you're interested in buying it. You just never know. Under the Tuscan sun, Sal, where you can just walk in and buy a property same day. Apparently, doesn't work like that.
No.
But yeah, just another fee you have to take into account. So far we have the registration tax, or the property tax, or stamp duty we call it in the UK, which is that flat fee of the cadastral price. Then on top of that you have the notary fee, which is the legal fee you have to pay. And then on top of that, assuming you go via an estate agent, you then have the estate agent fee. There's other little smaller taxes and fees that are maybe €100 or €300 here and there. I won't bother you with all that, but those are the main chunky fees that you need to take into account. I think another thing I'd mention is just how slow the process can be. To give you context, we were cash buyers in the UK, and we had contracts signed and keys exchanged in 3 weeks. That's how fast it was.
Which is also uncommon in the UK.
Yeah, if you go through go via mortgage, it's always going to take longer. But if you're a cash buyer in the UK, it's a very fast process. Even if you're a cash buyer in Italy, it's not. Again, all these bureaucracies you have to go through around the notary, dealing with the estate agent, paying your taxes. Then there's all sorts of assessments you're going to want to have done. Obviously, you're going to want to have someone come and check that the building's not crumbling and falling apart, that you have good connection to water and electricity and all the rest of it. But at the same time, there's also a whole lot of regulations and things involved as well. On if you want to renovate in these old houses, you're very restricted on what you can and can't build. You're restricted on colours you can put on doors and windows. So Italy's sort of famous bureaucracy will just slow it down. I've heard that if you're lucky, you'll get it over the line in 3 months, but realistically it can take up to 6 months to basically get everything exchanged and get your hand on the keys. I think the last thing I would say, now look, this is just my research. There's people out there who are better qualified than us, who are Italian lawyers or estate agents, and I'm sure they'll come in the comments, but at least to give you a high level understanding of the kind of fees and process that you're going to look at. I hope that gives you a bit of a flavour. Obviously do your own research, go deeper.
Yeah, this is not advice.
Speak to specialists, get your own, this is not financial advice. But another thing that I personally would do is I would be more focused on getting my own lawyer in Italy. And what I mean by that is my own property lawyer. I'd want to make sure that I find one who knows the region that I'm looking to buy in, inside and out. They know every law, rule, regulation. They know all the people who work in the local government, so they can get things moving faster. They can pick up the phone and speak to the right person. Is it an additional fee? Absolutely. But will it make your life 10 times easier in terms of moving faster, understanding the full picture, and making sure you're not buying the wrong kind of property? Because again, these lawyers will be able to tell you, look, you buy this is going to be hell on earth due to the regulations here, the fact you're not on the mains. They'll just give you all that safety and security that you're looking for before you make a kind of reckless decision of falling in love with a house and just buying it. Estate agents are never really on your side. Estate agents and real estate people are the same everywhere. They're in it to make money. They're usually on the seller's side more so than the buyers. Yes, it's good to maybe go to a few and see what they have and they're selling, fine. But the main person that's going to have your back is a local property lawyer. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I'm doing and is very important to me. And, again, not advice, but it is advice. I'd recommend you do the same.
So apart from finding the house, I think that's pretty much everything high level that you need to be concerned about when buying a house in Italy. Obviously, finding the house is probably the most challenging part.
The most challenging. I mean, It depends. If you're just looking for any kind of little house, you're maybe not that fussy. You just want a little place away. But again, for us, there's so many factors to this. And I think for a lot of people, they probably want this to be a forever home and maybe their retirement. So it is important to really take your time.
Yeah.
And for us, Ash says 3 years. We've not been looking for 3 years, really.
I've been looking for 3
We've been
years.
looking at houses in the sense of like, oh, we'd love to move to Italy, and
Yeah.
as people doom scroll on Rightmove. But in terms of taking it seriously, I'd say it's only since the beginning of this year that we've really dived a lot deeper into this and are actively looking at properties.
So I'd say, to give you guys a bit of context, the property we're looking for, as we've said, if you've seen this house, is very similar to this house in terms of design, I'd say. Obviously, we want something with a bit more land. Chad touched on the fact that he wants to become an olive oil and vineyard man. We'd like to, I think, produce our own olive oil and a small portion of wine. We're not going to become a new wine industry by any means, but I think we'd like something for ourselves. And this property will be something for our children to inherit, for us to enjoy a couple of times a year for the next, 50, 60 years of our life.
Yeah, and I think, so one is we'd love one a bit, I mean, it matches so much, the facade. We want the mix-match stones on the outside. You know, we want the cypress trees running up to the property. There's all these kind of picturesque things that we, of course, want. But I think another thing that's quite important is the commercial side to owning a property in Italy. Because it's not just the case of you buy it and there's no more costs. There's running costs, especially if you're not going to be here throughout the year. You're going to need someone maintaining your grounds, you know, looking at your gardens, watering, all the rest of it. You know, there's always issues with these old houses with bricks and tiles, and so there's always going to be an element of cost involved in maintaining the property. And what a lot of people do is they try to commercialize it when they're not there, which is quite a smart thing to do. Now, some people will put it up like these people have. They're renting out as a villa for families to stay in. You may put it on Airbnb. I think for us, we wouldn't need to commercialize it, but I think based on the kind of property that we're buying and the size of it, I think we could make pretty good money offering it out for weddings.
Yeah, and I think it really ties into us. I think it'll be a really pretty picturesque place to get married and to sort of spend time with your newlywed partner. After your wedding, I think it'll be a really, really beautiful place. So I think the place we're looking for ideally has enough rooms to occupy the family.
Yeah, it would be small weddings. It wouldn't be these huge, you know, hundreds of people weddings. It would be for people who want more intimate weddings with, you know, just close friends and family, maybe up to 50 people on the grounds, and, you know, you could maybe sleep the close immediate family.
Yeah.
Not so much that we particularly want strangers in our home. There's always an element of weirdness about that, but the reality is we could just make a lot of money by doing weddings. You know, things like Airbnbs and stuff, the commercial opportunity is quite limited. It's a lot of work with people in and out all of the time, whereas just doing 2 or 3 weddings each year can really just pay for the maintenance and more. So I think that's something that we'll not do immediately, but maybe a couple of years in we'll explore as just a way to commercialise the property.
Yeah, definitely.
But anyway, we hope that is useful. I hope you now have a little bit of a flavours into what Tuscany, this part of Tuscany, kind of looks like, what buying a property in Italy may involve in terms of the process and the costs. And then Ash has given us a little flavour as to the kind of property that we're specifically looking for.
Yeah. If you do have any other questions, obviously do fire away in the comments. We are by no means experts. This is just on our own research. But please do fire away if you have any questions and concerns. But I think we might leave that video here.
Yes.
And we shall see you probably next week for another video. We've got a lot to cover. We've mentioned we're doing vineyards. We're going to try and view some houses that we've got booked in. Yeah, some exciting things coming up. So definitely stick around. If you haven't yet, please do hit that subscribe button. Chad hates this part. Like the video and leave a comment. It really does help us out. But we shall see you for another video next week.
Take care.
See you later.